Welcome to Self-Funded. I'm your host, Chrissie. 10 years ago, starting a business around yourself was something reserved for celebrities. Today, professionals everywhere are breaking away from the 9-to-5 and building businesses around their own experience and expertise. On this show, we'll explore what it really means to be self-funded, the movement of professionals carving their own path, creating cash-flowing businesses, and building lasting impact without waiting for permission. I'll share my own journey and talk with others who are rethinking what's possible when you take your career into your own hands. Let's dive in. I've had an aha moment over the last couple weeks that I want to share with you today. It's the rise of the experienced entrepreneur. So for a little bit of context and background, I've had the concept of self-funded in my mind for a few years. When I was still at DraftKings, I started seeing breadcrumbs that helped me define it. I started seeing really talented people going out on their own, leveraging and monetizing their skills in a new way. Tools started to emerge that made this easier, starting with low-code or no-code tools, and now AI. And it seemed to become more accepted. Not that you're no longer ambitious or you're not taking your career seriously, but you're taking your career into your own hands. From that, I defined self-funded. I don't remember specifically when I first coined the term self-funded, but I felt like it perfectly captured this movement. You're building a business that's not reliant on outside capital, maybe down the road to scale, but not initially. So it is truly self-funded in the way that that definition is usually used. And you're building it around your own experience, around yourself. So you are self-funded. So now to the aha moment. One of the principles or characteristics I defined for self-funded business is that it is built around your own experience or expertise. The difference between these two was somewhat nuanced, but it made sense to me. Experience-based businesses were one that you were building for a former version of yourself. So think Pat Flynn, who started Smart Passive Income much earlier with an online program to help people pass a green architecture exam, which he had passed himself. And then expertise-based businesses are ones where someone has a specific professional experience and they're starting a company to sell a version of that experience into multiple clients, most likely B2B. But I read a couple of LinkedIn posts recently that really made me bring this together around experience. First was a post by Stephen Bartlett, the media entrepreneur and host of Diary of a CEO podcast, where he defined the competence cage. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but basically you spend your 20s climbing the ladder, getting the right credentials, becoming an expert. But then you get to a point where, quote, something is missing, but the cost of starting over is too high. You can't go from expert to beginner. The second was from Mike Dudas, a New York venture capitalist. He posted a link to an article about Amazon laying off 16,000 corporate employees, and his insight was so good that I want to read it verbatim. Quote, "My hunch is that experience, judgment, feel, and the ability to reason will be very valuable moving forward. The 50-year-old will be very hireable, but I'd expect they'd have to unlearn big org behavior like managing people and corporate hierarchy and adjust to having tremendous agency and individual leverage combined with learned instinct." End quote. So here's the aha. Experience entrepreneurship is the answer. Maybe I'm a glass half full person, but I believe that experience entrepreneurship is the path forward. Yes, it feels impossible to go from expert to beginner. Starting over is never easy, and it certainly is less so when you're 35 to 50 years old, you have a spouse, a mortgage, and children. But with experience entrepreneurship, you're not starting over. You are leveraging everything that you've learned and built, your education, your professional experience, and your network, and delivering it in a different way that's focused on creating value. Experience entrepreneurship has the potential to become a new movement in entrepreneurship. Think of different categories of entrepreneurship you've heard of. Social entrepreneurship, which is building a business or organization that has a social mission or maybe a double bottom line. Entrepreneurship through acquisition, or ETA. This has become incredibly popular over the last few years, where you're buying a business and then you're building on top of that. In some ways, these have become movements. They have communities, there's content around them, etc. And I actually think that's where the experience entrepreneurship is headed. I want to get into 3 things for the rest of this episode. First, define a bit more of what experience entrepreneurship is. Second, come back to the competence cage and share why I think experience entrepreneurship is the solution. Third, discuss why now. There are some structural shifts happening that are worth noting. So first off, what is experience entrepreneurship? Experience entrepreneurship is experience-driven, as the name would suggest, not idea-driven. However, that doesn't mean that there is not a specific problem to solve. You have solved a specific business problem in whatever full-time role or personal experience you've had. For example, if you're a corporate lawyer who works with early-stage founders, you see the gap. These founders need support with early business foundation, funding rounds, and client contracts. You just see an opportunity to deliver this value differently than being a full-time employee at a larger law firm. You might work with clients on your own on a retainer basis. You might publish content on LinkedIn or Substack about the biggest problems you see with your clients. You're delivering value and solving problems, just leading with your experience. Experience entrepreneurship is about leverage. And I'm going to use leverage in a couple different ways here. First, you're leveraging your background and experience. You're not starting from scratch in an industry you know nothing about. You're not starting as a beginner. You're pivoting and you're starting at the foundation that you're already at. Additionally, you're getting leverage on your time. You are one person. You are not trying to leave a good full-time job to trade your time for money in a hyper-transactional way, an hourly rate where you're billing out on individual hour or even sub-hour segments. Instead, you're leveraging your time through delivery-based pricing or eventually building asset value or passive income. You're replacing your job, but you're not just building yourself a new job. And experience entrepreneurship is ambitious. You're not leaving your career. You're not stepping off the path. You're not winding down your career trajectory. You're changing the container it lives in. It's a change in delivery, not mission or purpose. Next, I want to talk about why experience entrepreneurship is actually the solution to the competence cage. When you're a mid-career professional, you have so much more to fall back on, but the stakes are higher. As I previously mentioned, you might have a family and a mortgage. Yes, your earning power is higher, but your costs are higher too. You need to make a certain amount of money. The fear then is, if I leave, I lose everything I worked for, and that the only alternative to expertise is to become a beginner again. But experience entrepreneurship is a third path. You keep your expertise, your reputation, and your network, and those assets become ones that you can leverage. One very tactical thing that I want to share that can help with this. A lot of people I talk to who are on this self-funded journey start with an adjacent opportunity. It's often a fractional arrangement with their current or most recent employer, or a very close colleague or mentor who has a project for them to start with. So again, you're not starting from scratch, but you're leveraging the closest and strongest relationships you have. The last thing I want to focus on is why now. And there are two driving forces here. First, there are structural shifts that have made this model more realistic. And second, there's a large population of experienced mid-career professionals who this appeals to. On the structural shift side, there are a few factors. First off, fractional work has become more mainstream. So we had Taylor Crane, the founder of Fractional Jobs, on a few weeks ago, and he has certainly been one of the driving forces in helping fractional jobs really blow up over the last few years. Second, experience is valued more than credentials. With consulting as an example, the currency has typically been brand, Bain, BCG, McKinsey as the big forces in the industry. And now I've seen a shift to experience and results. Companies want people who have, quote, touched grass. They've lived it. They've not just built a slide deck around it. And most notably, AI has democratized knowledge and information and provides so much leverage at such a low price. There's also a huge population that this is compelling to. COVID was such a whiplash for mid-career professionals. Many companies went from offering huge stock grants and flexible work arrangements to making massive cuts in headcount, like the Amazon example that Mike Dudas shared. I've talked to so many people who didn't set out to be an experienced entrepreneur, but the job market has forced the shift. And the risk doesn't seem so great when you look at some of the massive layoffs and difficulty in finding a new role. Looking ahead, this aha moment was a big one for me. Identifying and defining the experienced entrepreneur was putting a clear term to what I've been focused on through my work, building my business the long game, and starting this podcast and platform. This isn't as much turning lemons into lemonade as it is about identifying an opportunity and a movement that can really provide so much value to your life financially, but also professionally and personally. And I'm excited to continue to explore this with you. Thanks for listening to Self-Funded. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's coming next. I'd also love for you to leave a review and share what you're most excited about on your own self-funded journey. And if you want to go deeper, check out my Substack. You'll find the link below. Until next time, keep carving your own path.